Okay, so season one, episode four of The Crown. Episode's called Act of God. And the reason it's called that is because there's this giant pile of fog that hits London that leaves visibility at like 1 meter or something, as they said, or 1 yard. And it's interesting because this weather event results in a whole power struggle uh, inside the government. Are they going to try to remove Winston Churchill? Will they get the Queen to help them do that? All that kind of stuff. But interestingly, in this episode, also because the last one we discovered that Philip, her husband, wanted to learn how to fly. Well, his reasoning for that was he's the most high-ranking officer in the Air Force, and he doesn't know how to fly a plane. So he's kind of like, I should probably learn that. It's sort of one of those things that's kind of what the Air Force is there for. And in the middle of the government arguing about the fog and what can be done to lift it, because there's some notion that it's caused by coal-fired plants, which is probably true. Um, the the government should be kind of focused on, hey, is it the coal-fired plant? Is it the sulfur coming out of those things? What do we do about it? How do we take care of this? Or is it just natural? Instead, the Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, and a bunch of the ministers are arguing over whether or not they should let Prince Philip learn how to fly a plane. So, oh, gee, let's not worry about the thousands of people dying. Let's worry about the prince flying a freaking airplane. Because, well, my God, he might get hurt. Well, okay. So he might get hurt. That happens, right? But no, we can't wrap people in bubble wrap and assume nothing's going to happen. So it just seemed like they were very distracted by the fact that he wanted to fly a plane, but he's in the Air Force. So to me, it was like, you can't really control every aspect of the sovereign of the royal family, and at the same time govern, right? You got to focus on what really matters, and that to me, I think, speaks a lot about politics. Is like, do we really focus on what matters? Are we really focused on solving problems, or are we focused on more artificial things? And it's important to focus on what matters, and less important, I think, to focus on the optics in some cases. Optics matter and the artificial stuff matters. I get that. But when there's people dying, you kind of want to focus on what's, that important part there. Instead of the optics of the prince learning how to fly, because her husband, who's the queen's consort, I think was his title or something like that. But anyway, it he he was a duke or whatever. The official title confuses me. The queen's husband. He instead, Winston Churchill and the ministers are kind of focused on that when they really should be focused on something else. So there's sort of this uh, undercurrent of, hey, can we go get the Queen to kick Churchill out? So there's this power struggle about, does he get to keep power or not? Eventually the fog lifts, and Churchill kept his job, but it was pretty close. She was ready to kick his ass to the curb. But it's interesting to me to see the dichotomy of what was going on in this episodes in the early 1950s, that the government was more focused on how something looks rather than fixing a problem that really needed fixing. And that, I think, even happens today. You'd think in the 70 years since then, or the thousands of years of government, we learn that sometimes you got to focus on the actual problem and not the window dressing, and not the staged, managed presence of how government is perceived. Well, all that's important, but at the same time, so is solving a damn problem. And it happens in big business, it happens in families, it happens in society. But I'm a goofy scientist professionally, right? So I'm a physicist, but to me, it seems pretty logical that, hey, you got people out there dying, and it could be because of what's going on in the coal-fired plants. Maybe you should fucking focus instead of worrying about whether or not the prince is flying a plane and does he do loops and rolls, or can we just wrap him in the back and tell him not to touch anything. So a very interesting episode and very dynamic, and I think there's a lot more going on in it than it really seems. But it just struck me as funny that that sort of it sort of came to the forefront that the government was distracted by the optics of something rather than trying to find a fucking solution. So maybe someday we'll actually learn as humans to stop doing that kind of shit, but we haven't learned it yet. So maybe someday. Everybody have a great holiday season. I am enjoying this rewatch of the show. I really am. I hope you're enjoying the videos. If you are, drop a comment. If you want to somebody happens to be a fan of the show and you'd like to be on, drop, shoot, get in touch. You can always find me somewhere on one of the social sites. Everybody have a great rest of the week.